on everyone, how you guys doing today? What I have for you today in this video is I want to talk to you guys a new feature that Apple is going to release, which is the privacy icon, and they're looking to release this in iOS and macOS. Now, what is the privacy icon for? The privacy icon is basically to prevent what they call the iCloud password phishing. So if you guys are not familiar with what phishing scams are, this is in regards to like spam emails, but basically a phishing spam is basically where you may get an email that may seem legit and real, but there are a few clues that will indicate if they are real or not. For instance, you may want to check the subject line to see if whatever the email is discussing about, if it relates to the subject line or not, or if the subject line relates to the content of the email. And if it's not, most likely that's a phishing spam. And if you hover above any links that are in there, so for instance, let's say if it's an email about Microsoft saying like your password is about to expire and that your account is going to get shut down. If you hover above the link, if it looks unusual and does not lead to like a Microsoft certified website, then most likely that's a phishing spam. Well, in this case with Apple, it appears that there might be certain applications where they prompt you for your Apple ID and password. It's going to act as if that is for an Apple service when it is not. And with the privacy icon that Apple's looking to implement, that's supposed to prevent that. What do I think about this? Well, it is a great tool to have so that way customers are being cautious. I'm just curious on how it's going to operate, because some people that are not tech savvy at all, and I'm talking about like the basics, where they get a smartphone and then they're like, okay, how do I turn it on? Oh, here it is. Here's the power button right here. Okay, now how do I unlock the screen? Oh, okay, I have to slide it. And if I have a password, then put in a password, bingo. And you have people out there that are not tech savvy and could very well just be on the base level of knowledge, meaning like they have no idea and they need the extra help like they can. There's people that are definitely not like me who gets a general understanding of how to go around in the operating system. So basically, Apple has to figure out a way to show those people that this is very serious and they should not be giving their passwords, everywhere, because there are instances out there where people may open like a spam email, or maybe they click on a link and then they request for your password in email. Obviously, when you see that point, you should ask yourself, wait a minute, why would it ask for my password in an email? This looks very strange. Unfortunately, some people still fall for that. This is one way of Apple trying to prevent any phishing frauds coming into the Apple ecosystem, because we all know that Apple, they tried their very best to keep their systems safe and secured, although I wouldn't say it's bulletproof. Everybody pretty much is not bulletproof when it comes to security. Now, can we argue about which one is more secure than the other? Maybe, possibly, but not always, because something happens with Android, Apple wins the round. Something happens with Apple, Android wins the round. And then it's just pretty much going back and forth, back and forth. There used to be that saying where people say, Macs don't get viruses, and yeah, no, that's not true. And then all of a sudden, a few years later, there was an article coming up with that, I think it was like the Mac Defender a while ago. I would say that happened like 5 years ago, where a virus was actually brought out to the Mac. So anything can get viruses, and anything can get hacked, especially if you are not too familiar with what phishing spam or spam emails are. And it looks like the iCloud phishing incident is very similar to that. So you definitely want to be careful out there when they're requesting for your Apple ID and password, because most of the time, I would say the only times you're required for your Apple ID is when you have to go into the iTunes store to purchase content, go into the App Store to download your apps and purchase content as well. Podcasts, well, actually no, I take that back. Podcasts, I don't think you have to pay for anything. But if you did, it's directly with Apple service. But if you're like launching a third-party application, all of a sudden they want to ask you for your Apple ID, you might want to be extra careful about that. Sometimes they may put that out there in regards to in-app purchases, but if they wind up asking you without any in-app purchase sections in there, then that's where you might want to be suspicious. I've seen applications where they have an in-app purchase section. Once you download the app, it's free, right? But then, if you want other features, then you have to pay for it. So technically, it may not be free. Now, that's just the manufacturers trying to make some profit on features that not everyone is going to use. And if they want it, they can feel free to purchase it. So stuff like that, I would say, is mostly safe. But you definitely want to be careful, especially if you haven't clicked on anything where you want to purchase, but then have to put in your password and all that, then I would be like very suspicious about that. If you guys want to know more about the privacy icon that Apple's looking to launch, there's a link to the article that I read, and that'll be in the description below. Definitely give that a read. Very interesting. Basically, take this as some advice, especially if you're going through your spam emails and all that. You may see one email where you know it's advertising and you know it's spam, and you immediately delete it in your junk. That's it. There might be certain emails out there that may look legit, but you want to check that email just to be sure. Make sure the subject line relates to the content that it's describing. Make sure that the sender's name that you have received the email from matches with the email address. Make sure that the links are valid and that they do not redirect you to any other websites, because that's how people get viruses on their machines, or people get their accounts breached or compromised. As far as the iCloud password phishing is concerned, you definitely want to be careful on where they're asking for your Apple ID and password. And you have to sit and think about, okay, hey, did I open anything that would require me to put in my password and all that? What do I want to do? Maybe I want to call the manufacturer just to make sure, okay, I hit this, prompts me for my Apple ID and password. Is that the case? Think about it. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care, everybody.